This is the story of Bayard Rustin, the unsung hero and civil rights organizer who orchestrated the March on Washington in just 8 weeks without cell phones, email, or fax machines. It is also the story of his brilliant tactical mind and unshakable commitment to nonviolence, and how those qualities transformed the entire civil rights movement from behind the scenes. Born on March 17, 1912, in West Chester, Pennsylvania, Bayard Rustin grew up in his maternal grandparents' household, which shaped one of America's most influential yet overlooked civil rights leaders. His grandmother, Julia Davis Rustin, worked as a nurse and helped charter the local NAACP chapter, welcoming leaders like W.E.B. Du Bois and Mary McLeod Bethune into their home. Young Bayard soaked up these conversations about justice and equality, while learning Quaker values of nonviolence and the belief in a single human family. Rustin's path to becoming the hidden architect of the civil rights movement's greatest triumph was anything but conventional. He was a gifted tenor who performed on Broadway and at Greenwich Village's Cafe Society nightclub. He joined the Communist Party, then later rejected their ideology. He served as a conscientious objector and spent 28 months in federal prison. And he lived openly as a gay man in an era when homosexuality could destroy careers and movements. Each of these experiences forged the complex leader who would one day stand behind the scenes of the March on Washington, holding a blank piece of paper and reassuring nervous reporters that everything was proceeding exactly on schedule. Rustin made his first major contribution to the civil rights movement in 1942 when he helped found the Congress of Racial Equality, known as CORE, alongside the Fellowship of Reconciliation, the pacifist organization that would become his launching pad for revolutionary change. Under the mentorship of A.J. Muste at the Fellowship of Reconciliation, Rustin deepened his commitment to Gandhian nonviolence, creating the ideological foundation he would later pass to Martin Luther King Jr. 5 years later, he made his boldest move yet. In 1947, Rustin organized the Journey of Reconciliation, the direct precursor to the Freedom Rides. This direct action campaign challenged segregated seating on interstate buses throughout the South, putting the philosophy of nonviolent resistance to its first major test. The consequences came swift and brutal. Rustin was arrested and sentenced to 30 days of hard labor on a chain gang in North Carolina. But even this ordeal became a tool for change. Rustin's detailed account of the inhumane conditions, published in the New York Post, sparked prison reform in the state and led to the abolition of the convict labor system there. It was a perfect example of Rustin's genius, transforming personal suffering into systemic progress. In 1948, Rustin traveled to India for 7 weeks to study Gandhian nonviolence directly from the leaders who had freed India from British rule. This journey proved crucial when, in February 1956, Rustin received a phone call that would change everything. A young minister named Martin Luther King Jr. was leading a bus boycott in Montgomery, Alabama, and needed guidance on nonviolent tactics. When Rustin arrived at Martin Luther King Jr.'s home, he was shocked by what he found. Armed guards stood outside, and a pistol sat on a chair in the living room. Scholar Michael G. Long explains that Dr. King had read Gandhi, but had not yet embraced pacifism as a way of life. Bayard Rustin and a few other pacifists encouraged him to do so. Rustin spent the next several months mentoring Martin Luther King Jr. in the philosophy and tactics of nonviolent resistance. He helped organize carpools, drafted strategies, and taught King how to frame the boycott as a moral crusade rather than simply a protest. The Montgomery bus boycott's success established both King and nonviolent resistance as the driving forces of the modern civil rights movement. In December 1956, Rustin proposed something revolutionary to King, creating a new organization that would coordinate nonviolent direct action across the South. In January 1957, they held the founding meeting of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in Atlanta. For the next 3 years, Rustin served as King's special assistant and closest advisor, working alongside organizers like Ella Baker to build the infrastructure of the movement. Together, they organized the Prayer Pilgrimage for Freedom in 1957 and the Youth Marches for Integrated Schools in 1958 and 1959. But Rustin's sexuality remained a constant vulnerability. In 1953, he had been arrested in Pasadena on what was euphemistically called a morals charge, essentially for being gay. This arrest would haunt him for decades, used as a weapon by those who wanted to undermine the movement. The most devastating blow came in the summer of 1960. Congressman Adam Clayton Powell Jr. threatened to tell the press that King was involved in a homosexual affair with Rustin unless King called off plans to demonstrate at the upcoming Democratic National Convention. After consulting with his advisors, King made the painful decision to distance himself from Rustin. Rustin reluctantly resigned from the SCLC, marking one of the few times that King lost a battle to fear. Walter Nagel, Rustin's partner in later years, reflected on this betrayal. He said, "It was a personally painful situation for him, I think, because he was disappointed that Dr. King did not stand up for him or did not have more backbone." But Rustin's exile from the inner circle of the movement would be temporary. In December 1961, labor leader Philip Randolph approached him with an audacious idea, a massive march on Washington to demand jobs and freedom. Randolph, who had built his reputation leading the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters Union, knew that economic justice was inseparable from racial equality, and he understood that despite the controversy surrounding Rustin, no one was better qualified to organize such a complex undertaking. What followed was perhaps the greatest logistical achievement in the history of American social movements. In just 8 weeks, Rustin had to coordinate with civil rights organizations across the country, arrange transportation for hundreds of thousands of people, negotiate with government officials, manage the press, and plan every detail of an event that would take place on the National Mall under the scrutinizing eyes of the world. Eleanor Holmes Norton, who worked with Rustin during this period, remembered his leadership. Bayard was the real general here, and he acted like a general, telling us all what to do and when to do it and how to do it. You needed an organizer, but you needed somebody with charisma to make you want to follow him. That was his gift. The challenges were enormous. Senator Strom Thurmond attempted to sabotage the march by calling Rustin a communist, draft dodger, and homosexual, and entering his entire arrest record into the congressional record. Some NAACP leaders questioned whether Rustin should be involved. President Kennedy tried to discourage the march, warning that it might hurt pending civil rights legislation. Rustin remained unshakable. Working from chaotic headquarters in Harlem, his team worked the phones constantly, typed letters around the clock, and coordinated with organizers in cities across America. They arranged for 2,200 buses, 21 special trains, and chartered flights. They planned portable toilets, first aid stations, and sound systems. They recruited marshals and trained them in nonviolent crowd control. On the morning of August 28, 1963, early reports suggested the march might be a failure. The National Mall was far from full, and some reporters questioned whether enough people would show up. But when nervous journalists approached Rustin asking about attendance, he calmly looked down at a piece of paper and assured them everything was on schedule. What those reporters did not know was that the paper in his hands was completely blank. By afternoon, over 250,000 people had gathered at the Lincoln Memorial. The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom became the largest political demonstration in American history up to that point. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his I Have a Dream speech, but it was Rustin's meticulous planning that made that iconic moment possible. The immediate impact was profound. As Rustin himself reflected, the march made Americans feel for the first time that we were capable of being truly a nation, that we were capable of moving beyond division and bigotry. Within a year, Congress passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, followed by the Voting Rights Act of 1965. But Rustin's influence on the movement extended far beyond a single event. He had introduced the philosophy and tactics of nonviolent resistance to American civil rights activism. He had mentored Martin Luther King Jr. in those crucial early years. He had demonstrated that massive, peaceful demonstrations could change public opinion and influence policy. As Eleanor Holmes Norton put it, without him, there would not have been the march. Without the march, there would not have been the movement. After 1963, Rustin continued his activism through the Philip Randolph Institute, an organization focused on economic justice and labor rights. But his later years were marked by ideological shifts that put him at odds with many former allies. His support for the Vietnam War, while opposing Dr. King's anti-war stance, created tensions. His movement toward neoconservatism in the late 1960s led to disagreements with most civil rights leaders. However, Rustin never stopped fighting for justice. In the 1980s, as the AIDS crisis devastated the gay community, he became an advocate for AIDS education and gay rights. In a 1986 testimony on behalf of New York State's Gay Rights Bill, he declared that gay people are the new barometer for social change. Bayard Rustin died on August 24, 1987, at the age of 75, from a ruptured appendix. For decades, his contributions were minimized or forgotten, largely due to the homophobia of his era. But in recent years, there has been a remarkable restoration of his legacy. In 2013, President Barack Obama posthumously awarded Rustin the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Obama's words captured both Rustin's genius and the injustice of his treatment. Bayard had an unshakable optimism, nerves of steel, and most importantly, a faith that if the cause is just and people are organized, nothing can stand in our way. So, for decades, this great leader, often at Dr. King's side, was denied his rightful place in history because he was openly gay. In 2020, California Governor Gavin Newsom posthumously pardoned Rustin for his 1953 arrest, launching a clemency initiative for all people prosecuted in California for being gay. In 2023, Netflix released Rustin, a biographical film starring Coleman Domingo, which earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor, the first Afro-Latino performer nominated in the category for playing a gay character. Today, streets bear his name, organizations carry on his work, and his story is finally being told in full. The Bayard Rustin Center for Social Justice, created in collaboration with his surviving partner, Walter Nagel, continues his mission of fighting for marginalized communities. Rustin himself perhaps best explained the source of his unwavering commitment to justice. He said that his activism did not spring from being Black. Rather, it was rooted fundamentally in his Quaker upbringing and the values instilled in him by the grandparents who reared him. Those values were based on the concept of a single human family and the belief that all members of that family are equal. Bayard Rustin changed the civil rights movement by proving that moral force, strategic thinking, and meticulous organization could move mountains. He showed that nonviolence was not passive. It was a powerful weapon against injustice. He demonstrated that even those pushed to the margins of society could stand at the center of transformative change. His life reminds us that the arc of justice is indeed long, but it bends toward freedom through the dedicated work of individuals willing to sacrifice everything for the cause of human equality.